Really happy to be doing this session today. I know a lot of people are really interested in tech, and I think I was given a talk in a school the other day, and I think a lot of people just look at a lot of these industries at face value and just think, okay, cool. If it's tech, you're just going to be behind a computer screen. There's no other avenues to tech. Like if you're tech, you're just doing software engineering, da da da. Whereas there's so many different elements and sort of sectors within tech. So that's why I was really happy to kind of bring Midday to come and talk about some of those verticals and those different sectors within tech, one of which is cybersecurity effectively. And obviously, one of the big reasons as well is that you've done it through an apprenticeship route as well for a well-known company. So I think it would be really good to kind of share some insight. I think over half of our members are really interested in tech as well. So this would be a good opportunity for them to learn about all the different verticals and ways to get into tech, basically. But with that being said, before I hand it off to Midday, I just want to do a shameless plug of Beyond Education. If you've been here before, you know that we're all about helping underrepresented talent access early career opportunities. We do this for a bunch of free resources on our website, career content across our social media platforms, and then professional insights like this with professionals from various different industries within tech, tech, finance, and professional services effectively. You could sign up to our website at www.beyoundeducation.uk. Honestly, I sound biased when I say this, but it's a very underrated website. There's a lot of free resources on there to help you. Um, and if on the rare occasion you don't find anything to help you and you want a one-on-one session, then you can always drop us an email as well. But yeah, that's pretty much what Beyond Education is about. I'd say honestly, guys, like don't shy away from asking as much questions as possible. There are no dumb questions. We're all here to learn. And yeah, like let's get a network going on the chat as well. And also like feel free to kind of shout on your socials about how this like session has helped you and so on and so forth. Really trying to bring awareness to people that this can help as well. But with that being said, I'll pass it off to Mids to kind of go through the presentation, and I'll be his facilitator today. But yeah.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Hi, everyone. My name is Ayomide. Just as Stephen mentioned before, I'm a software engineer. Still on my apprenticeship for the last 4 years, but I'm just coming off to the end, and I currently work for BT. So why don't we just start with the presentation? So on this slide, I'll be showing the agenda. So essentially, I'll go through who I am, then I'll cover what cybersecurity is, give you a typical day in the life of what I do. Then I'll be going on to cybersecurity apprenticeships, so covering stuff such as, what are the different types of apprenticeships that cybersecurity offer, how to get them and what you get out of it. Then I'll be talking about some skills, so both core and soft skills that you will need for a cybersecurity apprenticeship. Then I'll talk about how to find one, and lastly, what career paths you can go on. So let's just start with a quick, who am I? So as you can see on the screen, there's 6 different pictures. So I'm just going to start with the first 2 on the top left. So the one on the left is essentially someone who codes, and that's my day job really. I spend most of my time behind the screen coding. I know it sounds boring, but it's actually a lot more a lot more diverse than what it sounds. I'll touch on that when I go into the day in the life. But essentially, that picture just represents my my day job. So now the second and fourth picture on that same row also represent things that I do for my job as well. As an apprentice, you get exposure to different types of events. So I had the pleasure to go to Downing Street and actually talk with the head of education for the UK, along with some other apprentices that work at BT. And the fourth picture is also a outreach event that we did for college students, for Black young professionals. So as you can see, that's myself representing BT. And essentially, that's just things that you're able to do as an apprentice in cybersecurity. Then the third picture is one of my personal life. So in my spare time, I take part in community initiatives such as a current project I'm on now, which is the Wharf Town Hall regeneration, and also working closely with Mentivity. Then the bottom 2 pictures are also parts of my hobbies. So the one on the left, I have my own music and culture podcast that I run every week with my friend on the left. And then the picture on the right, sorry if there's anyone that supports Tottenham or United or whatever, but I'm a very big Arsenal fan. So I thought I'd just put that there.
Oh,
All right. on to what is cybersecurity. So I'll give you a quick definition. Cybersecurity's core function or core purpose really is to protect the devices that we all use. So things such as laptops, PCs, smartphones, tablets, whatever, and also the services that we access. So these can be things that are online or physical services that are offline. And essentially it's protecting it from any sort of theft or damage, but it's also protecting it against making sure that anyone who doesn't have any access to the amount of information that we store on them is kept out. So now that's a bit of a, dictionary based definition, but try to think of cybersecurity as protecting what you value the most. And the same way that you protect your house, you'd have to do pretty much like 10 times as much to protect your devices because you're connected to the internet, even things when it's like your banking, Twitter, Instagram, that all has a level of cybersecurity behind it. So I know I sort of briefly just touched on why it's important, but it's essentially the same reasons in which you would have a front door in your house or why you lock your doors, because you like to keep people who don't or shouldn't have access to your house out of your house. And that's the same thing with your devices. You want to ensure that people who aren't allowed on your phone or on your laptop cannot see or cannot even access the information that's on there, because at the end of the day, we all want to keep our information private. So now I'll go on to day to life. So I work a standard 9 to 5, and I know there's a lot of stigma around like 9 to 5s being boring and whatnot, but essentially in cybersecurity, I will, log on, or if I'm in the office, I'll be in for about 9:15, and my team will have like a stand-up call. So a stand-up call is essentially just a call with everyone else that's on your project team, explaining what you've done yesterday. So for example, if I had managed to implement some new functions or features yesterday, I'd then say that and then outline my intention for today and the rest of the sprint. Then around 10 a.m., I'll start working on some dev tickets. So
Okay. Minute before you kind of go on, sorry, could you just elaborate on what sprints actually is? Because again, I appreciate that some of us may be newbies to the tech scene and don't really understand like the terminology and stuff.
okay, yeah, sorry, my bad.
No, that's fine.
So sprints are essentially ways of working. So there's all different types of ways that you can work. But this one in particular runs on 2 week sprints. So when I say a sprint, it's essentially 2 weeks of just pure development and working and collaboration. And then at the end of those 2 weeks, there's a week off where you essentially reflect on what you've done in the last 2 weeks, see how many of your tasks that you've created or that you've done. So when I said development tickets, in our team, we have little like, think of it as like post-it notes on a wall. So it'll be a post-it note that I need to do this and this and this for the whole 2 weeks. So you reflect on those tickets, and then you essentially present to your team saying, okay, this is what I've done. The ticket is either done or it needs a bit of feedback. It needs a bit of collaboration because, I didn't quite understand something that was going on. It's essentially just a recap. And then you just write almost like a what went well, even better if, what did you learn from it? Is there anything that's blocking you? And then you just move on to the next sprint from there. So that's kind of like an overview of what sprint is like.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So yeah, I'd probably work on a couple development tickets or tasks that I have for about an hour, and then usually someone's already emailed me about something, or someone's dragged me onto a call because it's either they need assistance with something, or as an apprentice, you do get involved in a lot of networks and stuff. So I'm part of the EDN, which is the Ethnic Diversity Network. So we do have like team calls every now and then. So that usually happens around 11:30ish. Then around 12, I'll take my lunch hour. So all the way until 1 p.m. Then from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., I like to have like a project catch-up call. This is what we do in our team. So essentially, similar to how I said at the end of the sprint that we have a almost like a presentation of what we've done and asking if anyone needs help. We have like a little mini version of that. Just takes about half an hour, and it's just a quick update across the team. And this one is a bit more informal because again, these are your colleagues that you're working with, and essentially we're all trying to achieve the same thing. So it's just more of a thing like, oh, like, how's it going? Do you need any help? Because if you need any help, then I can make myself available from this time to that time, or we can go over it in private, that sort of stuff. Then from 3 p.m. I actually have a break, believe it or not. Um,
Mm-mm.
I know a lot of people feel like working is like constant, but especially in cybersecurity and pretty much any other industry of tech, you will always be encouraged to take breaks because, like I said, you're coding and you're problem solving and you're trying to, create new things. So it's very, very easy to get burnt out if you're just working straight from 9 till 5 or, without having your lunch break or even with you having your lunch break. So in my team, we have these things where we go for like 20-minute breaks. And as long as you just say, okay, I'm taking my break now, that's it. Go take your break for about 20 minutes and then you come back and do some work. So I'll take mine around 3, come back on 3:20, and I'll work again. That'll take me all the way up until about 4:20, and actually finish work at 4:45, not exactly 5, depending on, if things need to be released, then I might work a bit longer. But between that time, I'd like to just, send a couple emails out if I have any emails to send out, and then just prepare myself for tomorrow. So if I know that I need some things for tomorrow that I need to research, what I'll do is I'll actually Google it and I'll save it as a bookmark. Then I'll log off, come back tomorrow, and I have it there already. So I don't have to essentially do that whole research process again. So that's essentially a day in the life.
Super organized guy. Like literally, you got everything like mapped out. I mean, before you move on, how? Because obviously this sounds like a very ideal day in the life, right? So
Yeah.
how often would you say you're sticking to that schedule? Like, be real with us. Do you have days where it's kind of like, nah, it's not working like this? Like where it's kind of like do a task for like an hour and then you know what, I'm chilling, like kind of thing. Like,
Mm.
talk us through that, like the realities.
Okay, so like Stephen said, you got me. Ideal day in the life. But I would say around 40% of the time, it's like that. Yeah,
Mm,
around 40% of the time. The other 60, I'd say, well, actually, I'll separate into two, 30%. So 30% of the time, it might be a thing where it's coming towards the end of the sprint. And sometimes it's just that you just can't manage to get your task done. So it's
mm,
like, I need to finish this by Monday. It's Thursday. And I'm like, I still don't necessarily know what I'm doing.
mm,
So times like that, what I will do is not usually go onto my 11 a.m. team calls with like the EDN. I might message them and be like, look, can't lie, I'm a bit swamped. And also sometimes during uni times when I have deadlines, I'll just let my other networks know that, look, um, assignment deadlines are coming up, so I'm going to be quite stretched for time.
yeah.
And then I'll just substitute those downtimes that I have with like team calls and sending out emails. I'll just shift that to another day and just try and put my focus towards getting my deadlines done, which sounds a bit stressful, but
Mm,
it's part of that flexibility that you learn to have. Um, so that's one of the 30%. I say the other 30 is when I've essentially done my tasks a week ahead of the sprint, and then it's quite chilled. Because the way my team operates is that it's sort of hybrid. We're not all in the office, and because we're
mm,
located in different areas, I can work from home. So then that results in shorter days and the workload's a bit lighter. It just allows you to focus on other stuff. So if I've completed all my tasks by Wednesday and the sprint doesn't end until next week, Monday, essentially I can just get on with either catching up with some uni work or doing just some generic admin stuff or training.
No, that makes sense, and it sounds like a really balanced way of working as well, in sprints effectively. So you kind of like mash like a big amount of work for a short period of time, and then you're kind of just chilling and maybe like doing some other admin stuff as well. So that sounds really cool and interesting. But I'll let you move on to the next bit.
All right. So the next slide is on cybersecurity apprenticeships. So essentially, you guys, I'm assuming, would have heard about what apprenticeships are, but I'll just give you just a quick breakdown. In cybersecurity, apprenticeships are courses in which, depending on the level of your apprenticeship, because there are a lot of different levels, which I'm about to go through, depending on the level, you will spend at least a year balancing both work and study to achieve both work experience and a qualification within the realms of cybersecurity. Um, so now onto the levels. So they range from level 3 to 7, and I'll just quickly go through each level, what the requirements are, and what do you gain from them. So the first one is level 3, which can take anywhere from about 18 to 24 months long. And this is where you'll receive a qualification, which is equivalent to a BTEC, or in some cases, I think it's 2 A levels. And it's it's essentially equivalent to the time that you spent in college. And for this, the requirements are usually 5 passes at GCSE level. So I think that's 5 at grade A to C, I believe. Or that might have changed actually. I think it's from 7 and above. Yeah, 7 and above, I think. For level 4, this is typically a 2-year long course in which you will receive a certificate or a qualification equivalent to either a foundation degree, a higher certificate, or in some cases, just the first year of a university degree. Requirements are usually that you've done some sort of BTEC qualification for this, as it's equivalent to a year of an undergraduate degree or a foundation degree. So a BTEC or a minimum of 2 passes at A level. So I believe that's anything of a grade D and higher at A level. For level 5, it's usually a 3-year course. So as you can see already, as the level goes up, it's a bit more of a commitment because the workload is a bit more, and it's also going to be a bit more of a challenging qualification. So for level 5, it's usually a 3-year course where you'll receive a full university degree, and the requirements are most of the time quite similar to the ones in level 4, where you need a BTEC or at least 2 A levels at a grade, at a passable grade. Now for level 6, this can be as long as 4.5 years, which is kind of like my course, which is 4.5 years. And this is where you'll receive a full bachelor's degree that a lot of universities will offer. So for example, whenever you see something that says like a BSc, that's usually like a Bachelor of Science. So that's the similar type of degree that you will achieve. And then level 7 is a degree apprenticeship as well. However, this can be as long as 5 or maybe even 6 years. And the reason this is because you're achieving a master's in that field. So for example, if you do apply for a cybersecurity degree apprenticeship, that is a level 7, at the end of it, instead of having a bachelor in science degree, you'll have a master of science degree, which kind of sounds cool, but again, it's a it's a higher level of commitment, and the grade requirements are quite strict because essentially it's almost the same as if you're going to apply for the master's degree when you're going to uni, and the requirements for these ones tend to vary based on whichever company that you're applying for. So you just have to sort of search between the ones and find the grade requirements that suit you the best. So which ones are available? I'd like to say that you should think of any company that specializes in tech, and at least 70 or 75% of those will have IT or cybersecurity apprenticeships. So for me, I work at BT and we have a lot of cybersecurity apprenticeships, but other companies such as like Sky, IBM, Deloitte, KPMG, Accenture, I can go on and on. A lot of those companies have cybersecurity apprenticeships, and at the end of the apprenticeship, at the end of this presentation, I will show you where you can get these apprenticeships.
Makes sense. Shall I move on to the next slide?
Yes, please. So you might be asking yourself, okay, so I've heard what different types of apprenticeships are available. What do I need other than grades? So 2 sets of skills, soft and technical skills. I'll just start going through some of the soft skills. So first of all, you'll need teamwork skills. And this is essentially, like I said, you'll be working within a team because you're actually, doing real life work in a day job, and you will need to rely on other members of your team to either help you or just, further define whatever tasks you need to do. And working well in a team goes, I know it's a bit of a kind of like a cliche skill to say, but it goes a long way. The second skill is communication, or as I like to call it, active listening, because when you're in a team, you're going to need to be able to not only talk about what ideas you have, or like if you don't understand something, you should have the ability to say, I don't quite understand what's going on. Could you probably explain a bit more? But the reason I say active listening is because it's a very underrated skill to listen to what someone is saying and be like, okay, do I understand this? Yes or no? Am I capable of doing this? Yes or no? And then just further developing if you understand what this person's saying, because anyone can listen, but to really understand and comprehend what they're saying, that's a separate skill in itself. The third skill I'd say is problem solving, and especially in cybersecurity, because essentially we are solving problems on a day-to-day basis. We're going to need to be able to find solutions, and depending on whatever company or whatever department you're working in within cybersecurity, your problem solving skills will need to be. I'm not going to say you're going to need to be an absolute professional at it, but you need to at least have the foundations of identifying a problem and being like, okay, so what is the best route or best way that I can find a solution for this problem? Next is creativity, which kind of goes hand in hand with problem solving, because you might need to actually be in charge of designing an entire solution yourself. So like for me, I'm in my 4th year now, and the way that a lot of apprenticeships work is that each year you'll get a little bit more responsibility. So now I'm at a point where the current task I'm working on now, I've designed it myself. And essentially, I'm just relaying it back onto my project lead in terms of, okay, this is the way in which I think I want to do it, because it allows me to do X, Y, Z. I already know this, and it just all makes sense. Does this make sense in the remit of what you've asked me to do? And that's where your creativity really comes in, because you're allowed to express yourself within finding solutions. That's one thing that I really like about cybersecurity, because as long as it works, no one can tell you that's the wrong way to do it, because there's 1,000 ways to write code. It's just that which one suits yourself. I'd also say management and presentation skills. Management less so, but I'd say it's more time management and being able to manage what you can do within a day. So there's no point telling people that, if someone gives you a task, okay, could you create me an entire program that, I don't know, will scan 1,000 devices on the network, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I can do that for you today. Don't say you can do that today if you can't do that today. And that's one thing about apprentices that people usually, I could say, apprentices tend to forget that they're apprentices, and that as much as you are working a day job, there is not a lot of pressure. So if you say, you know what, I know you want this within a week, but I think if I'm being real with myself, I could probably give it to you in 2 or 3 weeks. That's fine, because you're an apprentice. You're essentially being trained up to do the job. It's not like you've been hired under the intention that you have like 10 years of experience when
And
you're
I,
an apprentice.
And I
So
think it's even important to highlight as well, even if you've been even if you've been hired as an experienced professional, at the end of the day, you don't have to say yes to everything, because it's all about managing your workload, right? So, yeah, it's important to understand that you don't just want to be a yes man at work, because yes man, what people would do is just pile you with more work to do, basically, and then you get overwhelmed eventually. But yeah, I think it goes without saying, as a junior, sometimes you can kind of feel a bit of pressure to prove yourself, or feel like you have to kind of just demonstrate that you're always available. But yeah, it's just important to always recognize that it's not that deep, right? Just manage your workload effectively.
yeah, exactly. Don't try and take on more than you can carry, because then that's how you get burnt out, and then other issues. And yeah.
Yeah.
Um, presentation skills, because again, when you create such solutions, and like I said previously of my day in the life, at the end of our sprints, we have presentations towards the team about, this is what I've done during the 2-week period, and this is what I've come up with, whether I've completed my task or not. So having a good grasp of presentation skills already will put you ahead of anyone else that you're working with. Even some people that I work with, honestly, their presentation skills aren't the greatest, but that's kind of how you get noticed. Because if you are a 1st year or 2nd year apprentice, or whatever stage of your apprenticeship you're at, and you can present really well and the work you've done is good, people remember good presentations. Like I hope you remember this one, but yeah, people remember good presentations. So it's always good to have a nice first impression for that. So that's enough for the soft skills. I'll touch on the technical skills. And if I'm being honest, you don't necessarily need any. And I know this might sound a bit like I'm lying, or I'm, selling you guys a bit short, but at the end of the day, you're an apprentice. And these companies that you're applying for, when they give you an apprenticeship, they know that, okay, this is someone who's coming straight out of education. We're going to need to train them up. So essentially, you don't need to be like a pro in coding or a pro in security or know how to build a PC from scratch. These companies will invest their time and money in training you up and making sure that, you know what, by the end of the apprenticeship, this individual is going to be well skilled in cybersecurity, and we'll be lucky to keep them. However, I will say that it is good practice, you know, to, for example, when you're applying for different companies, have maybe a little bit of business or cybersecurity related knowledge. So if it is a coding one that you're going for within cybersecurity, I'd say maybe just do a bit of research in terms of like, you know, how to use Python or how to use Java, even if it's just something very basic, even if you just end up doing something like hello world, just printing a statement, at least you know the very basic, because a lot of people won't. So that's it for the skills. If you could go to the next slide, please, Stephen.
No problem.
So now, how do I find a cybersecurity apprenticeship? You've just told me all the great things about it. So there are a lot of different websites that you can use, such as Not Going to Uni. You can also go onto the government website. There's a lot of different ones that you can filter by on there. Also Indeed, which is kind of strange because I didn't actually know this. So when I was looking for my one, I didn't use Indeed, but because I've done other things like this, I've seen that Indeed and other job searching websites, so Indeed, Glassdoor, they actually have apprenticeship vacancies on there as well, which is quite cool, to be honest. Also LinkedIn, you can find a lot of apprenticeship adverts there, and UCAS and apprenticeship.gov.uk. Any tips that I would give you, I'd say don't get disheartened by long initial applications, because essentially things such as apprenticeships, and even if you don't decide to do an apprenticeship, even university, you're going to need to do a quite lengthy application, but not all companies have long applications. When I did it, I think I applied for 7 different companies, and only 2 of them I had to write like long paragraph answers, but I didn't end up working there anyways. So yeah, try not to get disheartened by that. Try to research before you apply and also after you apply. So if you actually, no, I'll tell you what I did. So the way I applied for all these apprenticeships was I thought of a company. So I remember literally sitting down in my living room and thinking, okay, I want to get into tech. What tech companies are there? Oh, Microsoft plus apprenticeship. Okay, they don't have any that, you know, are in London, most of them in America. Also another company. Oh, wait, Sky. I'm watching Sky right now. Sky Apprenticeships. Oh, they have cybersecurity apprenticeships. And that's essentially the way I did it. I just thought of any company that is either in tech or IT related, and I put their name next to apprenticeship or cybersecurity apprenticeship, and they will come up. There's loads. Even companies that you won't even think of, they do apprenticeships. So try, you know, cast your net far and wide. Think about any sort of company at all, because it's more often than not that they do apprenticeships. And lastly, apply to as many as possible, because it's not like university where I think you can only apply to 5 unis and then take one as like your concrete choice and your insurance choice, something like that. You can apply to as many. Like I said, I applied to like 8 different ones. And at the end of the day, I had to choose between 3 companies. So when you apply for a lot, it gives you the choice of, you know what, even if I have these job offers, which of these companies do I like the most? Which of these companies, you know, probably offer the most or offer different types of apprenticeships? And also applying for a lot of them gives you somewhat of an advantage, because you would have gone through these applications and, you know, some you might pass and some you might not. And then when you get to different assessment centers or online tests, you get used to it. So it's like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't as daunting as before. So then when you go on to the next application that you've got into, it's like, okay, I know what to do now. Maybe I'm not going to mess up on this stage like I did last time, or I know a bit more than I did last time. So that's what I'd say as any tips for finding apprenticeships. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the career paths that you can go through with doing a cybersecurity apprenticeship. So job roles such as cybercrime analyst, cybersecurity manager, cybersecurity engineer, cybersecurity consultant, penetration and vulnerability tester, or you can even do something which is like my role, which is a test automation engineer that specializes in cybersecurity. There's a lot of different things that you can go to. These are just 6 job titles, but essentially, if you work in cybersecurity, you can pretty much work in any area of tech because it will give you enough skills that you will, for the IT side of things, be quite adept. You could do anything you wanted, but especially within cybersecurity, these are just like 6 of the, I'd say, key roles that will benefit you long run. I
Mhm.
should say, yeah.
And if you can kind of just maybe give us a bit of flavor in terms of like, the core things that a test automation engineer is doing. It sounds like such a sexy title, but like, what is kind of the core elements of your job?
Do you know what? I think it's crazy because, like you said, it has a bit of a sexy title, but it's not. Again, depends on where you work. I think at BT, it is a little bit sexy on a couple of days, but not for a lot of it. So essentially, what I do is I manage a program that allows other customers, internal customers, to run software tests. So
Mhm.
if you've ever heard of like someone writing a program and they want to test that it works, that is sort of the testing stage that I come in. So a lot of it is manual testing, but I'm in charge of a program that allows companies to automate their tests. So
Mhm.
where a test would take someone probably like 20 minutes to run and evaluate, the program that I'm in charge with, you can do that in 5 seconds.
Oh,
So
wow.
essentially, I'm writing code to make sure that it works properly, to make sure the security around it is robust, and to just, every like 6 months, probably throw in a couple more features. Yeah, that sort of stuff.
Okay, no, it sounds really cool. Does sound sexy. So yeah.
Thank you. At least someone thinks it does. All right, so on to my penultimate slide, the one that you guys are probably all looking forward to. Salaries and job outlook. As most people know, tech does pay well. So the average salary for someone in cybersecurity, again, this does vary with the company you're at because a lot more companies, whether they're in the public or private sector, will pay differently. So, for example, a cybersecurity engineer at BT might not get as much as someone at Google because Google is a multinational, multi-billion dollar company, etc., etc. So it does vary with where you work, but the average is around 54 to 62,000 a year, and that's for someone who is regarded as an experienced hire. And an experienced hire is essentially someone who's done, at the very least, I think it was 30 months of cybersecurity work. So
Mm.
essentially, if you've done anything of above a level 4 apprenticeship, you're qualified to, be in that experience category. Or junior and experience kind of goes hand in hand
Yeah.
in cybersecurity for some reason. Um, so the overall market itself generally ranges from about 29,000 upwards to about 110, 115K a year, and that's only in the UK. So like I said, it does very much vary on where you work, but you'd be happy to know that entering into cybersecurity, you can easily enter on about 35,000. That is, I think, a very good figure to start on. And like I said, you can go up to as much as 115, and that's only in the UK. There's always chances to work abroad in cybersecurity. So on about job growth, cybersecurity jobs are in high demand, and this is a figure that I'm actually going to read out. It's expected to grow by 18% over the next 5 years.
Mm.
Um, and I know that 18% doesn't really sound like much, but when you look at the actual figures, that they're saying that in 2025, which is 2 years away, they're expecting that there'll be 3.5 million vacancies, and not necessarily just vacancies, but needs for people who are trained in cybersecurity. That 18% actually looks quite big now. And the overall market itself is worth, I think the number is $10 trillion. That's globally.
Wow.
So when you think of it like that, it's like, wow, I'm entering a market that, or I could potentially be entering a market that not only is going to grow by the time I'm done, but it's going to become more and more lucrative to be in this industry. And I'm essentially going to be earning from day one and being trained for free. It's almost a no-brainer to join cybersecurity. Like when I joined, all of the senior leaders were like, "Oh, this is a perfect time to join cybersecurity," this, that, and the third. And I was like, "Oh,
You feel
whatever."
like they're
These guys
chatting,
are
innit?
trying to, they're just
Yeah.
lying. You know what I mean? Like they were just saying that because like, "Oh yeah, we've got so many cybersecurity apprentices and whatnot," but it's actually so true because even from when I joined all the way back in 2019 till now, it's crazy the way that it's growing because it's a thing where with the more and more that we use technology and the more that AI and stuff like that is coming into play, it just, it's like for every one thing that happens in technology, three things are needed in cybersecurity. And then
Mm.
the every two things that all these cyber criminals and cyber terrorists do, it's like every 10 things we need to do as well. So it's like we're always trying to develop and constantly innovate and constantly hire. And now that everyone's, using the internet and stuff, things like Face ID, Apple Pay, that weren't necessarily as popular 5, 10 years ago, now is the norm. We need people that are trained in these fields to actually work these jobs because people have come to realize that, oh wow, cybersecurity is very, very important. It's not just O's and ones and the matrix and all that sort of stuff that other people think it is. It's very, very important. And as I've just said, can be very, very beneficial, both financially and, just for your own education and training.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. And I know that there's a big skill shortage as well, in that field specifically. And I think,
Mm.
as you mentioned, like the criminals are getting smarter. So it's only going to mean that your job is more in demand, if anything, because you have to get smarter with them as well. So yeah, I definitely think it's a very lucrative field just from the outside looking in, as something to get into.
Yeah, and there's even one stat that I have here. It says that from 2015, so that was 8 years ago, there's been a 300% increase in both demand and job growth. That in itself is crazy.
That's wild.
Like 300%. Nah, that's, yeah,
That's mad.
yeah. It's very, very crazy. And like I said, companies are just spending more and more on training and making sure that, we have people for cybersecurity. So, like I said before, if you're worried about, I don't have any coding experience, or like even if I've done something completely different in the past, I work with someone who has a degree in French and history, but is coding cybersecurity with me. It does not matter. It literally does not matter.
Hmm.
That is essentially the presentation. So does anyone have any questions?
Yes, yes, we have a few that's been filtering in. So,
Okay.
first thing that someone wanted to ask, what did you make, what did you do to make yourself and CV stand out in the interview process? So I guess that's like two questions. So we can start off by saying, what did you do to make your CV stand out first?
Okay. So for me, I was able to get work experience when I was in sixth form. It was just a 1 day work experience type of thing. But even that in itself allowed me to at least talk about it when I was inside my interviews, because I did my 1 day work experience at a small startup company actually. Can't remember the name right now, but yeah, I did a day's worth of work experience there, and essentially I was just going through their own system management stuff, just not really doing much, but learning a lot in terms of me not physically typing, but learning from the person that was sort of shadowing me for the day. So that's
Mm.
kind of how I made my CV stand out. What was the second part of that question?
How did you stand out in the interview process?
Oh, okay. So again, sort of the same by, referencing some of my previous work experience, but I also had a lot of coding knowledge. So when I was telling the interviewer that, I've actually used Python and HTML and Java before, they were like, oh, like they were kind of surprised.
Mhm.
And then I don't know why, but for some reason he didn't believe me, which is kind of funny. So he was like, okay, so if I wanted to like print something in Python, what would I do? Um, and I basically just got a sheet of paper and like I was writing it. Obviously, some of the syntax was a bit off because I'm not using a computer. But then he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you really know your stuff."
Mm,
That's why I was saying that even though they're not expecting you to, have any sort of technical knowledge, it's good to just research even the basics, because that was a very basic question that he asked me. And
mm.
if I was able to wow him just by doing that, then that impression is going to stay with him when he goes back to all of the other interviewers and be like, oh, who really stood out? What candidates did you like? Did you not like? That stuff will stay with him.
Of course, of course. No, no, most definitely. I think, yeah, one thing I always advise people to do is really try and figure out ways to be memorable in the minds of the interviewers. You don't just want to come across like every other person that's going to be interviewing for the job. You want to do something that's going to make it stick. And again, I think in your scenario, because you kind of came in as this 17, 18-year-old saying that you know how to code, that's something that they're definitely going to remember. And they thought it was cap as well until you showed them the real. So that's
Yeah,
really
exactly.
yeah. Another question. This one's more so about BT. So does BT do rotation? So are you able to gain experience in other avenues of tech? And if so, what is it like? Is there a point where you have to pick what you would like to specialize in?
So on well, fortunately and unfortunately, fortunately, BT do rotations. However, I don't do any rotations on my scheme because my scheme is a bit more. I'm working within a bit more of a niche area within cybersecurity, but other cybersecurity apprentices do have rotations. So some of the people that I go to university with, they do, because it's a 4-year course, I believe it's 6 months rotations. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, 6 month rotations between different departments. So some of my colleagues have worked in TV, and then they went to work for Enterprise. Then they went to work in BT Sport. And then some of them are like more consumer stuff. So like your broadband and your home stuff. So yeah, we do rotations, and I think they really enjoy it because it's allowed them to say that, they don't like this sector at all. Like I know someone who absolutely hated Enterprise, and
Mm.
they told their manager, and within 2 weeks they had gone on to a new rotation. So it's very, I mean, as far as BT is concerned, it's very, very flexible in terms of rotations.
Okay, then no, it makes sense, makes sense. Thank you. And yeah, I think BT like they offer so many different like roles for like entry level. So it's definitely one to check out. We're gonna get them to pay us so we can do that. So we
Sure.
can so we can advertise that more. But yeah, another question that someone asked. Oh, someone said this has been really great, by the way. So yeah, like good presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Um, they wanted to ask any tips to getting into cybersecurity at entry level just with no background? Like, do you know of any good certifications or any courses to try and like kind of position yourself as someone looking to get into cybersecurity if you have no experience whatsoever?
Yeah. Okay. So the good thing about cybersecurity and just tech in general is that it's quite easy to get your foot through the door in terms of just the initial basic knowledge. So I use this website. I'm actually using this website currently as well, just to upskill myself. But Code Academy is a very, very good website. Um, it has, I think, about 20 different programming languages, and a lot of them have like job paths as well. So, for example, you can essentially start training on either a front end developer, security engineer, web developer skill path, and essentially it will just give you a plan for like the next month to just learn. This is what you learn, and it's very interactive. There's also things such as Pluralsight that you can go onto that has a lot of videos from industry professionals actually talking you through how to get started within cybersecurity and this tech. So there's definitely a lot. I think at the end I can put a couple links in the chat for whoever asked the question, and yeah, you can just explore it yourself. There's a lot out there.
Nice, nice. Guys, this session is recorded, so it will be uploaded onto our website. So if you sign up to our website, should be able to watch this back. Also, gonna upload the slides as well, so you can see that. I'm gonna force Midday to send us any links and any resources that he has as well, so we can kind of upload it to the website and stuff for you guys. Um,
Sure.
Another question was, yeah, solid session. In terms of negotiating salary, what has been your experience? I know this one's a bit of a techie one because of you're an apprentice. So how did you go about doing that? Was there even any leeway in terms of negotiation?
First of all, thank you for the feedback. To answer the question, I haven't necessarily done too much negotiating. I think there was only one stage, and this was during COVID. So I joined a year before COVID happened. And with apprenticeships, I can only speak again as much as PT is concerned, but is you get raises every year. So in your first year, you get a raise at the start of the financial year, and then on your 1 year anniversary, and then your second, third, fourth year anniversary, you get raises until you're at, I believe they said, 80% above the market average. So then once that is done, you roll off onto like a team member role. But for me, because COVID hit and I had to switch to working from home, I was able to, liaise with my manager. And this was a thing that, again, wasn't just specific to apprentices, but hit everyone. So we were able to negotiate a little pay rise to help, ease the burden of working from home and having to buy stuff such as like desks, monitors, and things like that. So I've had a little bit of experience with it, but not too much.
Nice,
Steve,
nice, nice.
Steve, do you mind if I jump in on that question?
Yes, yes, yes. I'll give Shirani a brief intro as well. So Shirani is a seasoned vet in cybersecurity, and he's actually part of our. Hello?
Yep.
I don't know if. Sorry, it tripped out for a second. Sorry. Yeah, Shirani is a seasoned vet, and he's part of our Discord community as well. So yeah, I'll hand it over to him to ask any questions.
So I guess if I do a very brief intro, because I'm going to eventually host one of these sessions. My name's Triani, and I'm a cybersecurity assistant manager at KPMG. I, just like Ayon, I've gone through an apprenticeship route, and funny enough, I actually left my apprenticeship midway through
Oh,
because
nice.
because I thought, let me just take the risk and get more experience, and it worked out for me because in August I joined KPMG as their youngest assistant manager in the UK for cybersecurity. So it's a nice little title which I have. But in terms of the questioning of negotiating salary, I'll say my best advice I'll give to anyone who wants to negotiate is do your research on the organization itself. Because generally for, let's say, for example, Big Four or big consultancy companies, they have very set structures. So if you want to negotiate a certain salary, it will come with the expectation that you might need to do a bit more work in some areas. So my best thing, which I tell everyone, is try your best, smash all the interviews, because when you want to negotiate a salary, they might expect a bit more from you. And you can, and hopefully through your interviews, you show that you're capable of certain actions and being able to learn and experience certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're wanting to more specific in terms of how do you go from 40K to 45K, there's other websites such as Glassdoor which tell you the ranges, or other forums where some people kind of expose themselves and tell you exactly how much they earn. So you'll be able to work out the general range for every level in certain companies. And with that information, you become a very powerful person when negotiating, because you know the maxes and the minimums.
Yeah, no, most definitely, I agree. And I think I I kind of have this level of audacity when it comes to negotiating salaries where like I just go for the top end, because if you've got into the final stage of the interview where you're discussing salaries, they want you. Like that's like you already have the bargaining power because they want you. And if you go in there and say the most audacious number ever, the worst they're gonna tell you is no, we're not giving that to you, but they're not going to take the job away from you because you asked for a ridiculous amount. So I think it's just always important to kind of remember that as well when you're going in negotiating, because there's the times I've gone into interviews and, I've got into the last stage and then I've mentioned a number, and to my surprise, they're like, oh yeah, sure, like we can do that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that went well. So I think it's just always important to remember that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Also, because of cybersecurity in general, such an in-demand field, a lot of organizations are willing to pay a premium to get experienced people because they're few and far between. And if I talk about my personal experience, I won't, Steve knows my exact numbers, so I tell him, but
It's a lot, guys.
in the last 3.5 years, I've been able to triple my salary. So, and already with cybersecurity, you earn well above the average wage in the UK in general. So once you get to the stage where you're earning a good amount of money, you now forget the money, just go for benefits and perks. Even I had I had an offer on my table today, which I denied because they wanted mandatory for me to go into office 4 days a week, and I said no.
Mm.
So once you're earning a good amount of money that you're comfortable with, go for the perks, because more than anything else, even if I was earning less money, if it means that I'm going to be happy, I'll do it.
Yeah, no, of course, of course. And yeah, I think with that being said, I'm really glad we kind of had this session as well, because we're just kind of highlighting these niche industries and sectors within tech that not many people may know about. So I definitely think if you're someone that's looking to get into tech and earning trajectory is super important to you, then I definitely think going into a sector where there's a skill shortage and it's really high in demand is kind of where it's at. And it seems like cybersecurity is the one. So, with that being said, like, honestly, Midday, thank you so much for your insight. Shirani, thank you so much for your insight as well. We are going to be hosting a session with Shirani on that, more so for experienced professionals in the future as well. So if you're signed up to a website, you can be tuned into that as well. As I mentioned, we are going to be putting this session on our website as well with the slides. So if you sign up to our website, you should be able to get access to that in due course. And yeah, be sure to post this all over your socials if it helps you. Honestly, it really helps just bring awareness to what Beyond Education is doing. And yeah, I'll be sending a feedback form shortly after as well. We're always looking for feedback to improve these sessions and make it better, get insight into like the different sectors that you guys want to know more about. But yeah, man, with that being said, honestly, Midday, thank you so much for the session. And yeah, I'll leave you guys to save 4 minutes of your time for the evening.